Hello, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm really rather excited to be revisiting the y-axis question. That is, why do some people invert the y-axis when playing computer games and other people do not? This is something that I, for years, most of my gaming life, have felt absolutely necessary right at the beginning, particularly when playing a first-person shooter. I have to invert that y-axis, and I need to invert the camera. Yeah. Although not anymore, and we'll come back to that in a moment. It was interesting. It was a conversation that I first embarked upon back in February, earlier this year, but a new article by the journalist, or one of the journalists that I was referring to in that video, has just been published in The Guardian, and I am intrigued to see what exactly the answer is. Supposedly, according to the headline, why do some gamers invert their controls? Scientists now have answers, but they're not what you think. I figured it'd be fun just to read this article together. The phenomenal response to an article we published on this question led to detailed cognitive research, and the findings have implications that go way beyond gamers, writes Keith Stewart. As I say, published earlier today at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 18th of September. 5 years ago, on the verge of the first COVID lockdown, I wrote an article asking what seemed to be an extremely niche question. Why do some people invert their controls when playing 3D games? A majority of players push down on the controller to make their on-screen character look down, and up to make them look up. But there is a sizable minority who do the opposite, controlling their avatars like a pilot controls a plane, pulling back to go up, for example. For most modern games, this requires going into the settings and reconfiguring the default controls. Why, Mr. Anderson, do they still persist? I thought, he writes, a few hardcore gamers would be interested in the question. Instead, more than 1 million people read the article, and the ensuing debate caught the attention of Dr. Jennifer Corbett, quoted in the original piece, and Dr. Jaap Munnik, then based at the Visual Perception and Attention Lab at Brunel University, London. At the time, the two were conducting research into vision science and cognitive neuroscience, but when the country locked down, they were no longer able to test volunteers in their laboratory. The question of controller inversion provided the perfect opportunity to study neuroscience of human-computer interactions using remote subjects. They put out a call for gamers willing to help research the reasons behind controller inversion and received many hundreds of replies. This is a screenshot of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Many thought that but what they first played affected the way they configured their controls. Interesting. And it wasn't just gamers who were interested. Machinists, equipment operators, pilots, designers, surgeons, people from so many different backgrounds reached out, he says, or rather says Corbett. Because there were so many different answers, we realized we had a lot of scientific literature to review to design the best possible study. Readers' responses turned this study into the first of its kind to try to figure out what actually are those factors that shape how users configure their controllers. Personal experiences, favorite games, different genres, age, consoles, which way you scroll with a mouse, all of these things could potentially be involved. This month, the duo published their findings in a paper entitled Y-axis inversion. Nice pun there. Y-axis inversion. Optimizing interactions between users, interfaces, and visual displays in 3D environments. And the reason why some people invert their controls? It's complicated, according to the article. The process started with participants completing a survey about their backgrounds and gaming experiences. Many people told us that playing a flight simulator, using a certain type of console, or the first game they played were the reasons why they preferred to invert or not, says Corbett. Many also said that they switched preferences over time. We added a whole new section to the study based on all of this feedback. But Corbett and Munich, now based in MIT and Northeastern University respectively, were certain that there would also be important cognitive components to the inversion question that could be measured only through behavioral responses. So they devised a questionnaire and a series of 4 experiments that participants would take part in while being instructed and observed via Zoom. As Corbett explains, they had to mentally rotate random shapes, take on the perspective of an avatar object in a picture, determine which way something was tilted in differently tilted backgrounds, and overcome the typical Simon effect, where it's harder to respond when a target is on the opposite, the same side of the screen as the response button. Then we used some machine learning algorithms to help us sort through all this survey and experiment data, he writes, and pick out what combination of all these things best explained whether someone inverted their controls. What they discovered through the cognitive testing was that a lot of assumptions were being made around controller preferences, and they were wrong. None of the reasons people gave us for inverting controls had anything to do with whether they actually inverted, says Corbett. It turns out most predictive of all the factors we measured was how quickly gamers could mentally rotate things and overcome the Simon effect. So how quickly you can adapt to whether or not the prompt, the button that you're being asked to push, is on the same side as the screen as the stimulus. So let's say you have to push a button on the right-hand side when you see something green. If green is on the right-hand side, you might be quicker at doing that, or you might be quicker at doing it when it's on the left-hand side, or quicker than others when it's on the opposite side of the screen. That's my understanding, at least, of the Simon effect. So that sort of mental agility, the ability to do that, seemingly, is a key indicator of inversion. The faster they were, the less likely they were to invert, apparently. People who said they sometimes inverted were by far the slowest on these tasks. Okay, so sometimes inversion meant that you were slower. So does this mean that non-inverters are the better gamers? No, says Corbett. Though they tended to be faster, they didn't get the correct answer more than inverters, who were actually slightly more accurate. In short, gamers think they are an inverter or a non-inverter because of how they were first exposed to game controls. Someone who played a lot of flight sims in the 1980s may have unconsciously taught themselves to invert, and now they consider that their innate preference. But alternatively, a gamer who grew up in the 2000s, when non-inverted controls became prevalent, may think that they are naturally preferential non-inverter. However, cognitive tests suggest otherwise. It's much more likely that you invert or don't invert due to how your brain perceives objects in 3D space. Now, interestingly, in that previous video, there was this talk about empathy, having empathy for particularly the avatar that you're controlling in a game, and the extent to which you identify with that being. It will have an impact on whether you want to invert the controls or not. Even that as well seems to have been thrown out the window here. Consequently, Corbett says that it may improve you as a gamer to try the controller setup you are currently not using. Non-inverters should give inversion a try, and inverters should give non-inversion another shot. She says, you might even want to force yourself to stick with it for a few hours. People have learned one way. That doesn't mean that they won't learn another way even better. A good example is being left-handed. Until the mid-20th century, left-handed children were forced to write with their right hand, causing some people to have lifelong handwriting difficulties and learning problems. Many older adults still don't realize they're naturally left-handed and could write, draw, etc. much better if they switched back. Through this research, Corbett and Munich have established that there are complex and often unconscious cognitive processes involved in how individuals use controllers, and that these may have important ramifications not just for game hardware, but for any human-computer interfaces. From aircraft controls to surgical devices, they were able to design a framework for assessing how to best configure controls for any given individual, and have now made that available via their research paper. This work opened our eyes to the huge potential that optimizing inversion settings has for advanced human-machine teaming, says Corbett. So many technologies are pairing humans with AI and other machines to augment what we can do alone. Understanding how a given individual best performs with a certain setup, controller configuration, screen placement, whether they're trying to hit a target or avoid an obstacle, for example, can allow for much smoother interactions between humans and machines in lots of scenarios. From partnering with an AI player to defeat a boss, to preventing damage to delicate internal tissue while performing complicated laparoscopic surgery. What started as an idle, slightly nerdy question has now become a published cognitive research paper. One scientific publication has already cited it, and interview requests are pouring in from podcasts and YouTubers. As for my takeaway, the most surprising finding for gamers who don't invert is that they may perform better if they practiced with an inverted control scheme, says Corbett. Maybe not. But given our findings, it's definitely worth a shot, because it could dramatically improve your competitive gameplay. So there you have it. It's all to do with how your brain works in 3D space. Now, the thing is that that may sound obvious. In that sense, it is actually by definition at the heart of the question. Why do you do it? Well, it's because of my brain. But to actually have got through things like experience and I guess the other reasons that people, the console experiences and the game experiences and the default settings maybe that people have experienced in the past as well, and actually discard those as reasons and actually come down on this idea of the Simon effect is wonderful. It's really great to actually have this now. And I figured I would follow it up because I really enjoyed the question, and it's clear that in the comments on the previous video, you guys enjoyed speculating as well. And as for me, as I hinted at the beginning, I actually have swapped. I didn't have to work too hard either to switch my preference from inverted. So as I say at the beginning of every game, having to go into the settings and change the y-axis to an inverted configuration, to now I just pick up and play, and that's been particularly prevalent. I've been going back through the Sniper Elite games. So I first really started this with Sniper Elite 3, and having completed Sniper Elite 3 non-inverted, I came to the PC to play Sniper Elite 5, having played through Sniper Elite Revelations. I'll put it on the screen. The name escapes me. Having played through that in inverted previously, I couldn't play it then. I actually couldn't play it inverted. I had to go to non-inverted gameplay. So I have in fact changed how my brain is comfortable, but presumably not forever. I could probably swap and flip and flop between the two if I really wanted to. But for me, and I think this is probably something I mentioned in that previous video, for me the issue has always been when I'm doing group gaming, when I'm playing with a friend, or when we're handing a controller back and forth trying to get through a hard level or something. The faff of switching from inverted to non-inverted, or the worst still, that horrible moment when you hand the controller over and they go, oh, it's inverted. Oh, how do you do this? It's disgusting. It was peer pressure, I suppose. But also, actually, it was, I wanted to make that whole experience easier for both of us, in whoever it was I was playing with. And therefore, it was no small thing for me to experiment and to see if I could do it, if I could just play non-inverted instead of inverted? And the answer is I can. So yeah, it's interesting, especially now. Like I say, I've been going back to other games that I always have played inverted, and I just go, ugh, well, this is a weird feeling, and have to put it back from inverted to non-inverted to its default settings. Often, in some cases, fascinating. Anyway, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you are satisfied with that answer. It's an intriguing and specific response and also a specific way of proving the answer to the question. But I'm quite happy with that. And obviously the research is now published to go and check out if you're so inclined. Until next time, do take care. Bye bye.